I tested every camera battery charger I could find to figure out if one of these could charge faster than one of these. So while this charger might work for a single battery, it definitely doesn't work for multiple batteries. And even if you get multiple chargers to speed things up, this is what you get. So I have searched the depths of the internet for a solution to this problem. AKA, I bought every camera battery charger I could find. I also asked a bunch of my camera friends what camera battery chargers they're using, and surprisingly, most of them are still using the stock bulky camera chargers, except for one who is afraid that his camera batteries might explode. So I'm gonna run some tests for science to figure out which of these chargers charges batteries the fastest and if they're actually getting to a 100% full charge. Now, to make this a fair test, we need to establish a few rules. The charger needs to accept USB-C. I think we're living in an era where most of us have this connector, most of us have a way to charge our devices. And surprisingly, there are a lot of chargers like this one that still rely on other connectors like micro USB-C. And it needs to come as a charger only. My one hard rule with camera batteries is to not use third-party batteries. If you're worried about your batteries exploding, don't use third-party batteries. The charger also needs to be widely available through an online retailer, so all the ones that I'm showing you will be linked down in the description. It's also important that the charger is available for multiple camera systems. So in this case, at least Canon and Sony, but most of the ones that I'm showing you are available for other systems as well. And number 5, it needed to have some form of percentage or battery life indicator. You can see we've got one on the Canon and one right here on the Sony as well. And I can already hear the Sony users typing away in the comments that Sony already makes a battery charger like that. Yes, they do, so I'll link one down in the description for you to check out. Now, in order to make this a scientifically accurate test, we need to establish a baseline or a control or a number by which everything else is going to be judged. So online, the Canon and Sony chargers say they take about 2 hours and 30 minutes. And I tested it and found that to be true. On average, I was getting between 2.5 to 2 hours and 45 minutes to charge a single battery. And then in terms of cost, we're going to use burritos. So the Canon charger and the Sony charger each cost approximately 6 burritos. Starting with the least expensive on our list is this Kumaru dual charger coming in at 1 burrito. It's the only one that has a name that I don't recognize, but there are lookalikes like it from brands like K&F, except this was the only one that had an actual battery level indicator. Charger number 2 is this K&F triple charger. Now, much like the last one, it is super basic, but it does meet all the criteria. USB-C, takes 3 batteries, but that final indicator is from 75 to 100%, so we'll need to test if it's actually gonna charge all the way. A lot of these cheaper chargers have a pro-rated milliamp rating, which means if you charge 1 battery, you'll be able to do it faster versus if you charge 3 batteries. So on the package, in the brochure online, it says that you can charge a single battery in 2.5 hours, which would put it on par with your Canon or your Sony chargers. But with 3 batteries, you're gonna be looking at longer than 3 hours to get a full charge. Now, there is one camera battery charger that I'm already using because it's the one that lives inside my camera bag, and it is this, the Peter Lindgren Tri-Charge. Now, this guy charges up to 3 batteries from whatever your favorite camera is, and it has an in and an out. So what you can actually do is if you take your USB-C cable and you plug it into the out, you can use this as a power bank. So if I take something like my Meta Ray-Bans, plug it into the bottom, you can see that now my Ray-Bans are being charged off of the Tri-Charge. But you can still use it like a regular charger, where if I plug it into the out, I can either grab, my little USB-C power brick and plug that into the wall. But I feel like this is a little bit too fancy to just leave at home. So more often than not, what I'm doing is I have my USB-C power bank. I will plug that in, and then that way I can charge my camera batteries from the Tri-Charge off of whatever USB-C power bank that I have. But in some cases, that's actually not enough. Let's say I'm out camping or I'm out on an adventure and I need even more juice. Like maybe I need to charge my laptop or my drone. That's when I pull out this. So this is the ecoflow Trail 300 watt power bank, and it can charge a lot of camera batteries. So ecoflow is the sponsor of today's video, and they've asked me to show you and calculate just how many times you can charge all of your various tech devices from their mini beast of a power bank. Starting with Meta Ray-Bans. You can charge the case 50 times or the glasses 400 times. How about the Canon PowerShot V1, 38 times. DJI Mic 3, 24 times. How about a Canon R5 or R6? So standard Canon batteries. So I got 18 times, but depending on your batteries, you might get even more. How about an RS4 mini gimbal, 12 times. Hasselblad X2D Mark II, 11 times. DJI mini drone, 14 times. If you happen to have a Google Pixel, also 14 times. And I'm trying to think of what's bigger than that. The only thing I can think is my MacBook Pro. And it can charge your MacBook 4 times. The Trail 300 DC can charge up to 5 devices at once and even has a port for an optional solar panel. With 5 layers of durability, you're protected from any accidental damage. And with 140 watts from each of the USB-C ports, you'll be able to charge your camera batteries at full speed. So if you have a device that needs charging while you're out on your photo adventures, check out my exclusive link for the best deal on the ecoflow Trail 300 DC. And big thanks to ecoflow for sponsoring this video. So the Peter Lindgren Tri-Charge is a great option for throwing in your camera bag or using while you're out traveling. And the fact that it has that dual function of being able to charge your camera batteries, but then use your camera batteries to charge your camera batteries? But the fact that it can charge things like your phone or your Ray-Bans or your other devices in a pinch is super convenient. But it does come at a price of 10 burritos. So if that's a little bit too much for you, or maybe the Peter Lindgren Tri-Charge is out of stock, you can get this guy, which is from a company called Lano. Now, you will notice that it is bigger, it is heavier, it is chunkier, and it only charges 2 batteries at once. And so you might look at this and go, why is it so bulky? Well, this actually has its own built-in USB power bank, meaning this can charge your batteries without having to plug it in, or you can use the battery that's on this. If I hit the button, you can see I've got 79% battery. You can use that with the ins and the outs on the side to charge your phone or your other devices. Now, this one's gonna come in at 8 burritos, but if it's a little bit too big and you don't want that built-in battery, you can get a version that is just for charging. This guy also takes 2 slots and has a little blank SD card slot that doesn't read the cards, it just kind of like stores it. And there is a USB-C on the side. Now, if you put 2 batteries in and you hit the button on the front, you can actually see the percentage charge. So in this case, 10 and 14. Both of those batteries need to be charged. And so the screen on both of the Lano chargers is really nice. So these 3 chargers are what you want if you're out traveling. But Lano actually makes one more charger. And in my eyes, this one's a little bit more versatile for at-home charging. So that's why this guy makes a little bit more sense if you're trying to charge as many camera batteries as possible, because this one only holds 2, this one holds 3, and you can see that they are basically the same size. This guy caught my attention because it uses 30-watt power delivery, which means it should be pretty fast, but it doesn't have as nice an indicator as these other guys, which actually tell you exactly the percentage. This one just has 4 little LEDs. But it only costs 1 burrito per power slot, which actually makes it a very cost-effective solution. So we'll test this one and see how fast it actually charges. Now, surprisingly, there weren't many chargers that charged 4 batteries, but I did find a couple. So let's go through all 3 of these from most basic to most advanced. So admittedly, I made a slight exception to the rules for this guy, which is made by Neewer, or it's upside down. They're made by Neewer. And the exception is that the LED indicator for the battery is kind of very basic. It just goes from red to green, but it was the cheapest 4 battery option I could find. It does say it requires a minimum of 45 watts of power delivery, and it does 1 amp per channel, which means it should be on par with the stock Canon Charger. And the MSRP says that it should cost 6 burritos, but I was able to get mine for half price for just 3. Now, if you want to step that up, Neewer actually has another version of their quad dock, which I'm calling the advanced quad dock, because it seems to have all the features of pretty much all the other chargers that we've looked at. So like the Sony Chargers, this one has a cover. It has a CF Express B and I guess an SD and CF Express A, because this guy actually charges Canon and Sony batteries, and you can mix and match, meaning you can charge like 2 Canon batteries and 2 Sony batteries. I don't even have a way to test this because I only have 1 Sony battery, but we will test it with the Canon batteries. And apparently, as you can see from the ins and outs on the side, when you fill it up with batteries, you can charge other devices. Based on my calculations, it might end up being a little bit slower when 4 batteries are in it compared to the Canon Charger. But I mean, if this delivers, I'm ready to be surprised. I don't even know what to say about this one because the promises made on the product page seem too good to be true. So this is a Axoon taupe rig 4-channel mega ultra. Actually, it looks pretty good. So this is what we're dealing with. You can see it's got a full-on screen and that there are 2 modes. So there's a smart fast mode and then a safe mode. And this claims that it will charge my batteries in 1 hour, which when I ran the math didn't really make sense to me, but I'm willing to give it a test. I will say the build quality is better than I expected. Now the price actually isn't that bad. I had to double check to be sure, but we're actually dealing with like 3.5, 4 burritos? We'll call it the dark horse of the group. But this one does say it requires a 60 watt power delivery in, which would be the most out of all the chargers that I've shown so far. Now, when you plug a battery in, it does give you 3 readings. In addition to the power percentage on the battery, it gives you an amperage and a watt rating, which is really interesting, so you know exactly how fast each of the batteries are charging. Time to get testing. Okay, so I have the test results and a definitive answer about which one of these chargers is the fastest. But how about the most accurate? So the way I tested this is I plugged in batteries to the charger, wait till the charger hit 100%, and then took those batteries, plugged them into my camera to see if the camera agreed whether or not these batteries were fully charged. Now there's one charger that failed that test, and that is the Kumaru dual charger. It actually took 6+ hours to do a single battery, or at that point, it was still charging a single battery. So I stopped it because that's gonna be slower than the stock camera battery charger. But all the other chargers reached a 97% or greater charge, meaning 97, 98, 99. And most of the time when the charger said it was full, my camera agreed that it was actually 100% full. But there are 2 chargers in this group that have a percentage rating. So the Sony dual charger and the Axoon. What I noticed that if the battery was 50% on the screen and I took it out and I put it into my camera, the camera actually said it was less. So in both cases with both of these chargers, it was about a 15% difference where the charger actually overestimated how much the battery was charged. So if you see an indicator on your camera that says 25, 50, 75%, just know that that voltage curve or what the charger thinks is charged might not be the same as what your camera says. So if you're trying to grab a battery as on your way out the door, just because it's 50% full, you might actually only have 30% full. And also to acknowledge a slight flaw in my testing is that I used a mix of P series and NH series batteries, and some of them are in better condition than others. Some of them are a little bit older, and I found would glitch out some of the chargers. So if you plug your battery in, Canon actually tells you, this has a bad discharge rating. Now, the Canon charger without fail would charge all the batteries, even if they were some of my older ones that aren't in the greatest condition. But pretty much all of these at one point struggled with some of my older Canon batteries. So just keep that in mind. If you're not watching your batteries charge and they're absolutely critical, you might want to come back and just make sure they're actually charging. It's also important to note that the bigger chargers require more power. So in most cases, the quad ones require 45 watts or 60 watts. Now I used the ecoflow in my testing, which is 140 watts, and I used a 100 watt power brick that plugs into my wall. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit higher end that will give you that full power rating, I'll link those options down in the description. But the first test I did was for a single battery charge, meaning I took one battery, plugged it into the charger, even if it had 3 or 4 or 2 slots, and measured how long it took. And we actually had a tie. There was a 5-way tie. The absolute fastest for a single battery was the Lano triple charge, which did a single battery in 1 hour and 34 minutes, and right behind it was the Lano dual charger. Kind of no surprise, they're made by the same company, but then within that range of 1 hour and 35 to 1 hour and 50 minutes, we also had the ANTHONYG quad charge, the newer, and the Peter Lindgren tri-charge. But the absolute worst was the KNF at 3 hours and 26 minutes. It actually took longer than the stock Canon Charger to do a single battery. And it was also the slowest for all 3 batteries at 6 hours and 31 minutes. So that's marginally faster than plugging in 3 of these separately and charging with 3 different chargers. But before we get to the absolute fastest, there are some honorable mentions. So the Peter Lindgren tri-charge I mentioned is my favorite for on the go. And the fact that it's so compact and has that dual functionality of being able to charge your batteries, but then using your batteries to charge other devices makes it a really good buy. The Lano kind of follows right up from that. It's also a great travel option because of how compact it is, and the fact, if I can put them in the right way, that if you don't need that charging your other batteries function, the price on the Lano actually makes it a really good buy. And then if you're someone who has multiple battery types, the newer Quad Dock Advanced, the fact that it can do both Sony and Canon batteries and has that charging in and out function makes it also a really interesting option. But the fastest out of all the chargers I tried, with 4 batteries being charged at 2 hours and 12 minutes, the ANTHONYG Taupe Rig was the fastest. Now it did pause charging a few times on some of my older battery packs, but at least it would tell me. So a few times it got stuck at 38%, but the fact that this has a more advanced screen and you can actually read those things is super helpful. Now, right behind that, at 2 hours and 20 minutes, both of the newer options were also super fast. And if you want to compare apples to apples, if you look at the amount of time per battery, all 3 of these quad chargers were between 33 and 35 minutes per battery, compared to the triple charge options, which would take 1 hour per battery. Now I'll put all that testing data down in the description for you to check out. So keep that in mind if you're trying to charge your batteries the absolute fastest. The way that you can cheat time and do a little bit of time travel is, of course, by charging multiple batteries at once. But let me know in the comments which of these chargers is the most interesting to you, or is there one that I missed? Leave that comment down below, and until the next one, grab your camera, get out, and go shoot photos. AKA, I bought every camera battery charger. AKA, I bought every camera battery charger I could find. Every camera battery charger that I could find. AKA, I bought every camera. I bought every camera battery charger I could find. Every camera battery charger I could find. Every camera battery charger I could find. AKA, I bought every camera battery charger I could find. Perfect. Thank you.